Okay, hello, Dr. Ray.
Hello.
Howdy.
Hello.
So what you got on your mind tonight?
Thank you so much for taking my call. I always love to talk to Dr. Ray sometime because this area really fascinate me. Especially because, even though I am gay, but to be honest, my lifestyle is pretty conservative, and it's not because my parents expect me to be that way, but just the way, the cultural, aspect of how I grew up. So one thing I don't understand is the polyamory concept, and I would hope Dr. Grace can help me understand this. And let me give you the reason why I asked you this question. So when I look at culture around the world, when patriarchy was the dominant force, a king can have multiple wives. However, when I read about the history of those culture, it seems like the king always have a favorite wife that he loved, and he loved like emotionally, not just sexually, and that wife does not necessarily have to be his queen, but can be some woman, whoever. And I think in religion, like Islam, for example, like the requirement, like you only have a maximum of 4 wives and you have to love them equally. So, and it's virtually impossible for a Muslim to do that. And so that's why I wonder, how is it possible that a person can love, multiple people with this, with the same devotion of, emotion and, feelings and, sexually too. So I hope you can explain to me how that works.
Well, you've got the central issue of the question. I love it. It's a very good question. Let me start off by saying polyamory is not the same as polygamy. What you described in Islam is polygamy, kings having multiple wives. King Herod in the Bible had 15 wives. That's polygamy. We're not talking the same thing at all. So I have 2 children, and I love both of my children. I will not say that I love them equally. I think I have different types of love or different levels of love for each of my children. I have 2 grandchildren. I love them. Nobody says, Darrel, how can you love 2 grandchildren equally? How can you love your 2 children equally? Nobody asked that question about. So that's my first answer is, we don't question the ability to love multiple people when it's our children or grandchildren. And I have several good friends, and I love them all. Nobody says, Darrel, how can you have 5 really good friends? I have probably 4 people I could call my best friends. Well, it sounds, we usually say, well, I only have 1 best friend. But no, I've never been a person with 1 best friend. I've got 3 or 4 best friends. And nobody seems to have a problem with that either. So I think we as human beings are not as simple as the religious narrative or the cultural narrative would have it. We can love multiple people, and we can love multiple people sexually as well. I've been polyamorous for 20 years, and I've had generally about 3 lovers at any given time in that 20 years. Some of those lovers I've had for a good deal of that time, let's say 7 or 8 years, and it's not a problem. We enjoy each other. I have one of my former lovers I'm still really good friends with. We're not sexually involved anymore, but I would still call her a very dear friend. Mm-hmm. So I also have a wife that I was married to for 18 years, still a friend with her. Nobody questions why are you still friends with your ex-wife? So I think there are variations, and every person has to come to their own decision. Some people seem to just be built to be exclusive with one person for life, which is just fine. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But there's other people who can't fit that mold and don't want to fit that mold, and they should have the same rights, the same abilities to have multiple relationships that are loving and above board. All of my lovers always know about each other, if not even know each other. I might, if they want to, I'll introduce everybody. And I don't expect my lovers, I don't own my lovers. I don't own the people that I'm deeply and intimately involved with. They can have other lovers if they want. You know, we have rules about being safe, about keeping everybody informed and advised. It's actually pretty darn simple. Once I got used to my polyamory lifestyle, I think it's easier to live my lifestyle than it ever was monogamy. Mm-hmm. And I tried it twice. I was exclusively related, married twice for a total of 28 years in my life, and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. So and I never cheated. Not once did I ever go outside of that marriage. At the end of 2 marriages, I said, why would I want to try this a third time? So I said, I'm not doing it a third time. I must be one of those people who likes lots of lovers, and I'm not gonna apologize for that. That's a Christian notion. Now, let me go back to one thing that you didn't ask, but I want to just throw out here, and that is in the Bible. In the Bible, there is no Christian marriage. There is no model of Christian marriage in the Bible. Try and find a single example, even in the New Testament, certainly not in the Old Testament, that has what we would call monogamous, one-on-one, one-sex partner for life type of marriage.
Yeah, abstinent until marriage, married at a young age, married for their entire life, monogamously, you know, in that model.
Right. It's not in the Bible, even though everybody says, well, it's biblical Christian marriage.
Right.
Anyway, Minh, that's a great question. Did I answer your question for you a little bit?
I guess, you know, the thing is, I feel like it's difficult for me to grab the concept because you say you love your children, but you don't love them equally. And I guess in my mind, when you like sexually committed to somebody and, you know, and emotionally too, so it seems like impossible to do it from even like for 2 people would be a struggle. And
it
like,
might
for
be
example,
it might be impossible for you. It might be impossible for your neighbor or your lover. It ain't impossible for me, obviously. I've been doing it for 20 years. I'll just give you a quick example. One of my lovers, she and I call us our Wednesday lover. And we see each other every Wednesday for several hours. And we've been doing this for going on 7 years. And I'm happy with it. She's happy with it. My primary lover, she and I see a hell of a lot of each other. But I still go out and travel with my travel companion. And we call each other, my travel companion calls me her travel husband. And we travel all over the world together. And she and I have been doing that for 18 years. 18 years I've been traveling over the world with her. And my other lovers all know about this. In fact, I will not date anybody unless I tell them and they approve. They don't like it, tough. Go find somebody else. I am not going to go back to being monogamous. That's just not going to happen. So it's not impossible. It is impossible for some people, and that's okay. I mean, some people, I cannot do calculus. That is impossible for me. But don't make me do calculus. And yet nobody's going to criticize me because I can't do calculus. Mm-hmm. So you probably can do much better at some part of your life, whether it's, you know, maybe you can read 3 languages, you can speak 10 languages, or you can do great math. I can't do any of that. So it's a skill. I have the skill of having multiple parties, multiple relationships, and loving all these people. Why would they stick around if they didn't care for me and I care for them? Mm-hmm. 7 years is a long time. 18 years is a long time. And yet we're still together. It's longer than many marriages last, by the way, if you've noticed.
Yeah, that brings up for me a question I love to put to as many sex experts as I can because they all seem to have a very different idea. So you describe it, polyamory, and your relationships as a skill. And so I'm wondering if you see your polyamorous lifestyle then as a choice that you've made, or if you see it as an orientation comparable to, homosexuality versus, bisexuality might be monogamish rather than full-on polyamory and those different kinds of ways of looking at it.
Yeah, I think it's much more three-dimensional than, of course, the religious narrative. That's partly why I wrote my next book, Sex and God. Mm-hmm. There's a whole chapter I deal with called a concept that I think is really useful. And, man, this may be helpful for you as well. It's called socio-sexual orientation. And you can actually get online and just take the survey. It's a 7-question survey. It's pretty simple to take. I score about a 7.2 out of a possible 10 points. The higher you score on the social sexual orientation, the more your need for sexual variety in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. So I have a high need, and I have had a high need my entire life for lots of sexual variety. However, a person down the street might take the same survey and score a 1 or a 2, which means they don't have a need for sexual variety. And so they're going to be probably pretty happy with the same sex partner for many, many years, if not for life. Now, I'll tell you on another part of me, I'm a very adventurous person. I've climbed 45 of the highest mountains in the continental United States. I'm guessing you don't know anyone who's climbed as many mountains as I have. Am I correct? Yeah. So I'm obviously pretty adventurous. There's something inside of me that just has to get out. I get in my car and I drive out west, and I'll go for 2 weeks all by myself. And I'll climb a half a dozen mountains, and I'll hike over all sorts of beautiful terrain. Perfectly fine being alone and perfectly fine with my adventurous lifestyle. Well, that adventurous lifestyle probably is related to my sexually adventurous lifestyle too. Why would I deny myself a beautiful climb up a mountain? Why would I? Because that's not, for some reason my culture says climbing mountains is wrong. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same thing if I said, why would I deny myself a beautiful sexual relationship with another human being that wants to be in the relationship with me? Why would I deny myself that? There's no reason except for cultural or especially religious expectations.
That's an important one for me. The question of why, very much turns into a why not. There's not a good reason not to enjoy life to the fullest, to take these things on, to have these opportunities.
Because like we say,
right.
If it's safe and if it's consensual, have fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty simple concept.
Yeah.
In that sense. So if you look at the population using that survey I mentioned, the social sexual orientation survey, mm-hmm. Obviously the great majority of people are going to score about a 4 to 5, 4 to 6 at most. And then there's going to be a few people clear at the bottom, number 1, and a few people clear at the top at number 9. And they just seem to be driven in that direction. So kind of in answer to your question, Christy, is it a choice, or is it, something you're just born with? Well, I'm pretty sure I was born wanting to climb mountains. I started climbing my first mountain when I was 6 years old, and I got a lot of trouble with my dad because he lost me. So at 6 years old, I was already climbing mountains, even though my dad said, no, don't go climb that mountain. So I must have had that.
Yeah. So, Minh, does that kind of help a little bit more explain?
Yes. I mean, somewhat. I have to say, I think I'm going to read Dr. Ray's book to understand more about this subject. Mm-hmm. Because,
I recommend it.
Because I did not grow up in a religious fundamentalist, so I don't have the shame and guilt that Dr. Ray you mentioned. The thing is, right. I noticed that I have a tendency to look at a lot of good-looking guys when I walk around. And I don't feel bad about that. However, when I feel emotionally attached to somebody, the desire to look at somebody else just somehow dissipate, and I don't want anyone else. So I guess that's why the concept of loving multiple people at this deep level, like emotional level, it's not something I understand very well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I would say that feeling that you're having, that lack of desire, once you become emotionally connected to somebody, that drying up of that interest in other people is perfectly healthy and natural and wonderful, but it's not universal. And that's, I think, where we often find ourselves in this culture where a particular dominant narrative has taken over and said that this is the singular way to be natural and healthy. And because this is my experience and I happen to be in power, and I, as a man, am only attracted to women, by the way, women who don't work and who stay at home and take care of the, if that is the dominant narrative, we're led to believe that it's the only way to be. So I don't think, I often find when I myself came out as polyamorous, so many of my friends were like, are you telling me this because you've secretly had a crush on me all these years? And I would suggest that polyamorous folks are just fine with you maintaining your monogamy. We're not vampires that are out to turn you. Any more than you're trying to make all of the hetero men be gay, so you have a larger dating pool. I mean, it might be nice if the cute hetero guy that you meet was into you, but it's perfectly fine to be monogamous. It's perfectly fine to be straight. Just because we dedicate perhaps a statistically unbalanced amount of this show to things like homosexuality, to things like polyamory, it's just because nobody else is talking about those things. So we like to be at least a part of the corner of the internet where these very real people who very much exist have a place to go, and where other folks who maybe don't share those orientations or those lifestyles or beliefs can learn about them and witness the fact that these people are humans.
Yeah. And I want people to simply get comfortable with the notion that we all have a right to choose how we want to love and who we want to love. It's pretty simple in that sense. Some people only want to love one person. Other people want to love more.
And both are okay.
So, So the question, another question that I want to ask you, Dr. Ray, is that so when I came to this country, people always say, you should be honest with who you are and don't be afraid, to be real in the world. And people who appreciate for who you are will love you just the way you are. You don't have to change. And yet, I guess during, I watch on TV, like some people, they get excited when, they dress up some sort of character to get their partner, role playing, yes. Or they have some sort of behavior, like they wear diaper or something, and the partner turn on. So I sort of, I don't understand the psychology behind that. So if the person is real, on the surface, and then how come that's not enough to turn their partner on, and they have to role play with some different character to get their partner excited? So can you give me some insight about this?
I would say we talked about role play with a bit of detail on our October 23rd episode. That feels right.
The one right before
Halloween.
Right
before Halloween. It's very notable because we were all dressed like idiots. We were joined by the lovely Seraphina
I was
Smith.
dressed very nicely,
okay,
thank you.
Megan was dressed very nicely. And you know what? I was lumping everybody in with me because Seraphina actually had an excellent honey butt costume. So both of these lovely ladies joined me when we talked about that in much more detail. And I only mention that because I do want to make sure to get to our next caller, but that doesn't mean that, Dr. Ray, I wouldn't want you to take a quick swing at that if you could.
I'll take one quick swing, and that is, we are multifaceted people. Human beings are very complex. And our sexual ideas and desires evolve and change throughout a lifetime. Also, when we're first developing our sexuality at age 12, 14, maybe earlier or a little later, there are things that stimulate us in the environment we're not even aware of, that then seem to come out later as fetishes or something like that. So we are very complex, and so let's just accept our complexity and enjoy it.
Yeah, and remember that it's play. It's a game. You know,
it's fun.
In the upcoming, the upcoming ACA newsletter, we talk about this in a little more detail as well. And so just remember that sex is fun, that it's supposed to be oftentimes silly, even when we're taking it very seriously with our whips and our chains and our leather ball gags, that even those things really are, even if they kind of gross us out or freak us out or they have this drama to them, it's a costume. It's silliness. It's play.
It's also not for everyone, but it is for some people. And, you know, your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling, man.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Ray. Yeah, thank you, Megan. Thank you, Christy.
Yep.
You have a nice show.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Glad to hear from
Yeah,
you.
thank you.